welcome. My name is Bethany. My pronouns are she, her, and this is my channel where I talk about my knits and any other bits that I feel like. I am coming to you from a way too hot Northern Ontario, Canada. So if I seem a little like dewy or glistening, it's because I am. And also, if you hear a fan, it's because there's a fan on because it's too hot and my apartment does not have AC in the room that I film in. It has been a minute since I filmed a project update video, so that's what we're doing today. Yeah, let's just dive right in and see if I remember how to do this. Okay, let's start with finished objects, of which I have a lot. I am going to start with the ones that I don't actually have on the couch with me because they're in the wash because, I finished some stuff that I'm actually wearing. So that's pretty great. Let's first talk about my Sappho's Love tank hack. I've knit this before. Basically, it's knitting the Sappho's Love by Elizabeth Margaret without the sleeves. There isn't much more of a modification than that. You just leave the sleeves on and do a little bit of an edging. I was knitting this. This was a whip the last time I talked about it, and I was almost done. Finished it in the meantime, and I've been wearing it so much. It is knit out of Sandnes Garn Tynn or line, never know how to say it properly. And the colorway was Scarlet Flame. I'll pop a picture up because it's in the wash. I love how this tank turns out every single time. I did have to redo the bind off at the hem because when I originally did it, I tried to do a stretchier bind off, which is, I don't want to say that's silly to do with the type of yarn that it is, but because it's basically nothing but linen and cotton, doing a stretchy bind off doesn't work the way you think it will. But I thought that I was very concerned about being able to get the garment over my head, and I wanted to make sure that the hem bind off would allow for that, right? Even though I had put in the hip shaping that is in the pattern, I don't know, my brain got very concerned about that. So I did I think I used a larger needle, or I simply did a sort of stretchy bind off or a half stretchy bind off. And the hem was like really ripply and flaring a lot, and I really didn't like the look of it. I finished it on a weekend where I was away, and I had to wear it because that was like only one of the only things I had packed. So I wore it, but I hate it. The whole time I was wearing it, all I could think about was how bad the hem bind off was. So when I got home, I undid the hem, redid it, put it in the wash, and have been wearing it. I don't want to say ever since, but it has been in regular rotation since I fixed the hem. So that's pretty great. For reference, I believe I knit this in size 3, which is my normal sizing in Elizabeth Margaret patterns. And I believe I knit this on a 3.5 or a 4mm needle. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself on the screen. The other project that I finished that I'm pretty sure was still a whip, or maybe not even a whip, maybe it was like to be knit the last time I recorded, because honestly I do not remember, is my scrappy blue vest, where my idea was to use not all, but most of the blue or sort of greeny blue sock weight leftovers that I had in my stash, held with white crochet thread to sort of get me to a gauge that is close to worsted, and knit the See My Vest worsted. I have done this once before in a different yarn combination, and I've talked about that elsewhere on this channel. I will link my scrappy projects video that I did recently, and I do talk about this vest more in that video, so I will just link that below if you want to go have a look at that. That video is actually doing pretty well. I'm impressed. I didn't think people would be like super interested in that, but that video is doing okay, so that's fantastic. Yes, so once the hot weather arrived, I haven't been able to wear this too much because it is a thicker fabric, half of which is wool. So definitely too hot for a day like today where it's humid and you get the prickle. And unless I was going to layer, and then that would just be too hot because layering seems like a terrible idea these days, or at least right now. But I love how this vest turned out. I did try to keep the the use of the yarns sort of not in an order, but I tried to go like medium light dark, medium light dark in terms of like the tonality of the yarns that I was choosing, mostly just to break it up, because it when I looked at all the yarns together, there wasn't a way to fade it, because that was my original thought, was like, oh, maybe I can fade from the top down, and have that kind of work. But most of the yarns were too different from each other. And I had such varying amounts as well that I thought, you know what, we'll just stripe it, and the white crochet thread will sort of help soften all of those harsh lines that I would end up with if I was just holding it single. And I think it's pretty successful. Hopefully there's been a photo up here the whole time for you to see what I'm talking about. Let's move on to the finished objects that I actually have here with me. And hopefully you'll have seen by the title of this video, there is a theme with my most recently finished objects, and it is the color. So it'll be interesting. Editing Bethany will know what I've chosen, but like thinking about naming this video, knowing that I was going to film it, I was like, oh, what do I call it? Do I call it like Bog Witch Green Summer, or do I call it, because I got inspired because we went to see The Mandalorian, and of course those of you who have been paying attention know that I have a Grogu back here. I was like, oh, it's also kind of Grogu Green Summer, and honestly that one's a little snappier. So you know what, in the future we'll know what this video is titled. Either way, the color palette is very like Bog Witch, Forest Witch, or it's Grogu. So let's get to me actually showing you things rather than just talking about it. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is my, and I don't know if this has been mentioned in the podcast before, it is my Kidding Around shawl. This is by Lamb and Kid, and this is a free pattern on Ravelry. And as you can see, this does not look like the pattern image, because I was attempting to do this with only one skein of sock yarn rather than two. And I only had one color of fluff yarn, which you can see is sort of this tealy green that's being held. Let me just do this. That's being held together with the yarn. And I have thoughts about this. So here's the thing. I really did like working on this and how it turned out. I think it's very pleasing. But your girl does not like fluffy yarns. I think it's official, because those who have been around for a minute will know that I tried to use this fluffy yarn by itself to knit like a little scarfy thing. And that was not going well. I was not enjoying that at all. So I attempted to rip that out. That didn't go well either. So I just like cut my losses, cut it off from the ball of yarn, and then just used what was remaining in this shawl. My biggest gripe was that I was struggling. I knit this on a 4mm needle, and I feel like the parts where I'm just holding just the sock yarn by itself on the 4mm look great. I loved how this rib pattern was done, and like I'm actually very tempted to just knit an entire triangular shawl in that stitch. So we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. But once I switched to the section where you hold the yarns together, I was really struggling on the smaller needle. So eventually, like quite literally after like 5 rows of trying to do that, I switched up to half a needle size. So I switched up to a 4.5 millimeter. And then this section went way better. So great tip if you're struggling with holding fluffy yarns together with literally anything. Maybe try like if it feels too dense, if it feels too tight on the needle, maybe go up half a needle size. And I don't think it's obvious that the gauge is that different. And if it is, oh well. So I used up pretty much every single inch of the sock yarn by itself. I still have a little bit of the fluff left over, but I don't care. I was done. I was not going to find another yarn to make this any bigger. For reference, the sock yarn was a new to me yarn dyer that I picked this up from Knitomatic in Toronto the last time I was there. And the name of the yarn is Spooky Stitch Knits Sock. And this colorway is called Sea to Slay. And I really, really like it. And I kind of wish I had gotten a second skein, but like who knew until I got home. So yeah, I do really like the size that this came out at. It feels very manageable and still very wearable because of the shape. But guess what? I'm not going to wear it because it's fluffy, and I think your sensitive girly is not going to be able to wear it, which is fine. I know some people for whom they would love this, and they maybe are less sensitive than I am to the fluffy yarns. And by the way, this yarn is a Surrey, which is great. I don't think I actually would have finished this if I was working with mohair, because I just do not like the feel of mohair. And I like the feel of this Surrey, but I did not enjoy actually working with it. Not fun. Not my jam. I'm so sorry. If you love fluffy yarns, all the power to you. But I have definitely discovered that it's not my jam, even though the result, it looks really nice. Yeah, it's just not for me. So yeah, all of that is good data. Let's move on to the next thing that I finished, which was the DIY Design It Yourself raglan tee, which I think was in the queue the last time I filmed a project update, and is now finished. And I'll just show it to you here. I'll also pop up a picture, probably not of me wearing it, but just so that you can see the whole thing a little easier. This is a very bright yarn that is almost blowing out on camera because of how the sun is coming in at the moment. I will also somehow show you. This is the design element that got me to knit this. This is a sort of viney leaf pattern that is just on the sides of the garment, right underneath the underarm. And I have a story. I have a story with this. This, in my opinion, took forever. According to my Ravelry, it actually took less than a month, but not much less than a month for me to knit. But I got stalled on that side design part of it, mostly because I liked the design that I held up is mentioned in the pattern, and she links to a separate website where you can get the full pattern repeat so that you can knit it. So she's not claiming for it to be her design, but I thought I was going to be clever and do a different kind of motif down the sides of the garment, and for the life of me, I could just not figure out how to adjust, not to adjust the underarm, that's incorrect, but how to mark out underneath the underarm the correct amount of stitches for the pattern that I wanted. And the other problem was that the pattern that I wanted, I could not find instructions for it for in the round. I could only find instructions for it knit flat, so that you'd be purling the other side. And I'm like, no, this garment is in the round. I need to be able to execute whatever pattern I'm doing in the round. So that was a real struggle. I tried a lot of things. I tried sort of just like figuring it out in terms of trying to transpose this flat pattern into circular, because I've done something similar like that before, but perhaps it was an easier pattern to turn into an in the round pattern than the one that I was thinking of. Anyway, all that to say was that I went back to the motif mentioned in the pattern, and I just went with that. I just went with that, and it was fine. It was still a bit of a struggle, but once I got in there and had gone through like one repeat of the motif, much easier. I believe I ended up knitting 5 repeats of the motif down the side, which got me to the length that I wanted. This only took 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn, and I was knitting it in Manos del Uruguay Alegria, and the colorway is Toy Soldier. And I loved this yarn, and I knew it was going to be a garment as soon as I saw the color. And yeah, I really like it, and I do like the fit. The fit is very boxy, but it also makes it kind of breezy, which I really like. I was a bit concerned because when I did block it, it did grow, but it did grow lengthwise. That's absolutely true, but it also grew widthwise, and I think I was unprepared for that. But I think that was the side motif relaxing, right? Because it was a little bit bunched up when I was actually knitting it. And then, like, not that I forgot that that would spread out, but I kind of forgot that that would spread out. So it made for a wider garment than I was banking on. And it's probably a wider garment than the measurements in the actual pattern. Also, I want to comment on this pattern. It is a free pattern. So in my opinion, it is very detailed for what it is, but I also found it confusing to follow to a certain point. Everything was fine in terms of the instructions, from cast on at the neck all the way down your neck shaping and your raglan shaping, to the point where you would join the V-neck and start working in the round. What got confusing for me was quite literally all the options there were for the rest of the garment. I get that this designer was trying to give as many options as possible in the pattern itself that you could actually follow, right? So that you wouldn't have to go elsewhere and like sort of wing it yourself. But I found it very, very confusing. I also found it confusing because there was an option for bust darts, or bust shaping, I think they called it in this pattern. So there were instructions for doing the bust shaping or no bust shaping, and then there were also instructions for sleeve adjustment versus no sleeve adjustment. And where all of that was laid out was kind of confusing for my brain. Maybe if this was laid out differently, I wouldn't have found it so confusing, but just the way it was laid out, I really struggled, which is probably the reason I found this to be a slog. The actual knitting, apart from figuring out the side motif situation, the actual knitting was not difficult. If you've knit a V-neck anything, and if you've done raglan construction before, you'd be fine with this pattern. But just, I can sort of recommend this pattern, but I certainly don't think it's beginner friendly. I forget whether that is mentioned in the pattern. I don't think it is. But like, if you're a beginner and you think, oh yeah, this would be great, just make up my own t-shirt garment, I would say get a few garments under your belt before you go into this one. Unless your brain is the brain that can understand and follow through this pattern better than mine, that's great. But yeah, I just wanted to comment a little bit on that, because I think that also had an impact on how I was feeling about this project. The next item in the swamp witch, forest witch, Grogu green saga are my banana socks by fire and fiber, and I'm quickly just putting this on a sock blocker so that you can see it better, because holding this up will show you nothing. It'll just show you a tube, which is essentially what these socks are. These socks are a version of a tube sock, and there we go. So I'll just hold it up like this. You can see here, oh gosh, I didn't put that on very nicely, did I? Or at least not very evenly. Please hold. Okay, that's a little bit better. So you can see here all along the back of the sock is 2x2 rib, and then all along here we've got garter ridges, and what makes it a banana sock is that the garter ridges scrunch up the top of the sock, so that like when you just like lay them down without either your foot or a blocker in them, they're shaped like a banana. That's why they're called banana socks. There's lots of different versions of this, but I used the fire and fiber version of this, and great pattern. I did have to do like kind of weird mental math because I'm so used to like cuff, leg, heel, foot, toe, all with shaping or no shaping, like whatever, right? But I'm so used to like each of those parts being a certain length, a certain measurement, that like to just keep going, which is what you do, until you want to do the toe, right? Like you just knit until you're done and want to do the toe. I was like, well, how long do I like my socks? Right? Like, because I know for me, generally speaking, I love a 5 to 6.5 inch leg, but I'm like, on this, what does that mean? How do you measure that? Right? So I went to the tried and true method of just trying it on as I knit it, which worked out. And then what I did was on the first sock, as soon as I got to the point where I'm like, yep, okay, this is long enough, I can start the toe, I then grabbed my sock ruler and I popped it into the tube and measured so that I had an actual measurement. And I will say, I think I knit these slightly too short. But here's the thing, it's okay, it's not actually too short, because all that does is what I mean is I probably knit for the foot part, I probably knit it too short before starting the toe, but really all that does is take away from your length in your leg. So it's not the disaster it sounds like. It's not like the socks don't fit. They do fit. It's just as a result, the socks are not as tall in the leg as I originally thought they would be, because I was aiming for that 4 to 6.5 inch leg situation. So all that being said, I was close to the measurement mentioned in the pattern, which is I think between 10 and 10.5 inches before the toe. I think I was barely at 10, and I really should have gone to 10.5 inches, I think. So that's a note for next time. This yarn is Good Grief Dye Studio Fundamental Sock, and the color is Enchanted Forest, and I just fell in love with the color, and I kind of like how it's sort of striped up because of the gauge that I was knitting at. I will say that this is a pretty rustic yarn, and I didn't know that when I ordered it. I still think they're really cute. I just don't know if I will end up wearing these. Good news, because these are not knit to a specific foot size. I could give these away to anybody and they would probably fit. So that is probably going to happen because I don't think I'm going to wear these, unfortunately. But they're really cute. I like the pattern. I think I will be knitting more banana socks in future. Mostly because really nice to not have to think about, oh, it's time to turn the heel. Oh, it's time to do your gusset. Oh, right. Like, oh, did I knit it long enough? Are both of them matching? Because really, as long as you get your total length before the toe to the right measurement, you're golden. You got it. I'm going to talk about another pair of socks. These are not blocked yet, so oh well. So I decided to casually participate in the easy peasy Scrap Along, which is being hosted, and it's still going. So if this sounds appealing to you, you can still participate casually. This is a knit along being hosted by oh my gosh, I'm going to forget the person's actual name, but their handle on Instagram is Everything Shapes Us. And if you love scrappy socks, this account is for you if you haven't discovered it yet. Yeah, check that out. Gorgeous scrappy socks being knit all the time. So I was like, yes, I love me some scrappy socks. And I had some mini skeins from Tangled Poets left over. And luckily, it turned out that, like, because what I do is I buy a big bag of mini skeins from Tangled Poets like once or twice a year, and then I just use them randomly. So what was left in the bag that I had ordered last year was greens into oranges and burgundy right here at the toe, which I was like, well, that's a pretty good color palette, honestly. The light stuff in the middle, maybe not such a great um, transition, but I wanted to use them, and I was like, it's good enough. I received that because there's yellow in here, and then I went right into yellow mini skeins in here. So here, let's just show these up here. So this is basically my basic go-to sock, which is very close to Summer Lee's I'm So Basic sock. And I did attempt to sort of fade these minis as I knit in the round. But what's really nice about the Tangled Poets minis is that if you get the right ones lined up next to each other, they kind of almost fade themselves. Like their colors work so well um, together in this case, and maybe I just got lucky, but I felt like I didn't have to try hard to fade them. You can sort of see maybe it's on the other one. Yeah, in this one you can see here that I didn't really make an effort to fade, because the other thing is I was also splitting the mini skeins in half ish, so that the socks would match for the most part. And I think in here I ran out. um, I didn't have enough to fade in the next color, so I just had to go straight into the next color. But I feel like you also don't really notice that per se, because the browns sort of help muddle that transition. But I think this sock is the more successfully faded through sock. Yeah, so I really enjoyed these. These were so potato chippy that I knit this pair in, I think, 2 weeks or less. So um, definitely going to keep that in mind. I have ordered more mini skeins from Tangled Poets because I'm officially out. I used up the bag. Hooray! So yeah, so it'll be fun to see what's in, because when I order a bag, it's completely random. I don't know what I'm getting in it. I just know the number of mini skeins I've ordered. You can order in batches of 25, 50, 100, 200, and 500. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself, but I will link to them in the description because their yarns are great. They don't just do mini skeins, um, they do dye full skeins of sock yarn as well, and I have used those in the past, and they're wonderful. So just generally highly recommend. Tangled Poets is a Canadian dyer based in Southern Ontario, I believe. And yeah, I've been a fan of them for a really long time. Um, when I buy a yarn advent, I'm generally buying theirs because theirs are so gorgeous. Just because of how they dye their yarn and how the colors come out. I really like them. One finished object that doesn't quite fit this whole Grogu green forest witch aesthetic is my flock vest. And I'll show it here. Oh, there we go. There we go. I'll also pop up a picture It's always this side and I always forget. Yeah, so I got really, really knit fluenced by, specifically by Andrea Mowry's sample photos, or like pattern photos for the flock vest. I loved the color combination that she did, and I've since seen her wear it in like other lights than however those photos were shot. And it turns out that the color palette is a little different than what I assumed it was. But to me, it definitely looked like sort of a tealy blue green with, let's see if I can do it here, with like mint green and a mustard yellow orange. And I was like, well, I have leftover mustard yellow um, from my All for One. I believe it's my All for One sweater. Anyway, I knit a sweater last fall out of Barocco Remix Light in this lovely mustard yellow orange color, which is not normally in my color palette, but I really liked it, and I was like, I've got lots of leftovers, so surely I can use some of that to stripe in here. So I decided to try to use Remix Light for the vest, and I think it's pretty successful. Here's the thing: this pattern is written for worsted weight, although I have seen a lot of projects online using probably what is closer to a DK weight than, and like we'll call it a heavy DK rather than just DK the way that this is apparently DK. Yeah, so I was like, I might be really playing fast and loose with gauge with this project, but I swatched and I did get quite close to the recommended gauge. Which is 21 stitches for 4 inches, and obviously had to change needle size. So I was knitting this on a 4mm needle, and then the smaller needle for the ribbing. And I think it's pretty successful. It is a slightly more open fabric than I imagine what the actual pattern sample is knit at, but for me, I think it's fine. It didn't affect the measurements on my garment that badly. I did decide to knit size 4, which is the 40-inch, because I did want positive ease, and then I also figured if because my gauge was off, I'm like, well, if it ends up a little bit smaller, that's fine, and if it ends up a little bit bigger, that's fine too, because I'm very chill with just a little bit more positive ease over 40 inches, because my bust is about 38 to 39 inches. So like that difference is not huge to me. So like that's a maximum of 2 inches ish more positive, like positive ease, right? So I'm completely fine with that. So yeah, this was great. Let's talk about the yarn management of this, because other folks on their podcasts, I'm thinking right now of Rachel is knitting. She's also knitting this. So are a whole lot of other people, but I've been watching her podcasts lately, and she's been talking about knitting this and the yarn management of doing the stripes. And she said something about, she's like, do I want to hate my life now or hate my life later? And it does feel like that is the choice. So here's what I did, and it worked for me. Yes, you are going to have to weave in a ton of ends, but also maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the point, that at the end of this, you need to take a little bit of time and just chill and weave in some ends, or find a friend who loves to do that for you, and you can maybe trade skills, and you can do something for that friend that they don't enjoy but you don't mind. So what I did, and I will say, Andrea Mowry does put instructions, tips in the pattern for not the best way, but a way to do yarn management for the stripes. Because what you are doing, in order to keep these stripes in here to a single row, you are sometimes sliding your work from one end of your circular needle to the other to either knit 2 rows in a row, or you're going to turn it like you normally would, because you're knitting flat for all of this, right? There's no in the round except for when you do your armhole edging. There's no in the round. It's all flat. There is purling. I'm so sorry. Because I know some people don't like purling. I don't mind it, so that was fine. So I did attempt, when I cast on, to do the yarn management as she states in the pattern, which quite quickly turns into managing 3 balls of yarn. And in the words of Rachel, I started to hate my life. So what I decided to do was, I figured it was easiest to choose one of the colors to always snip the ends when I was done that particular row. And I chose the mustard yellow, the middle stripe of the stripe pattern, because I didn't want 11 billion ends and be clipping every single end. So I was like, okay, I think I can definitely carry the turquoisey, teal blue, and the mint color, because you're using those a little more often. So I'm like, I don't mind that. I will carry those yarns. No problem. I'll figure it out. And I would snip the ends of the mustard yellow and worry about it later. And I did, and really relatively, and then there are also parts in the pattern where she gives you instructions to cut all yarns. And so you do have some extra ends to weave in, but it's not all the ends all the time. It's not every single stripe or anything like that. So I thought that strategy was really pretty successful. And honestly, weaving in all of the mustard yellow ends plus the others really only took me like the equivalent of 2 evenings. Really not bad. Really not bad at all. And it is kind of nice. And Andrea Mowry, I think, has talked about this on her podcast. Is like, because you've got those ridges that you get from picking up stitches, it's really nice to be able to weave your ends into those, and it feels very secure. So there's lots of places where you get to do that on either side, once you've picked up for the neckline and the arm edges. Yeah, so I think this was very successful. I have worn this a couple of times, and because this is not 100% wool, I forget the actual makeup of Remix Light, but it's mostly cotton, silk, and other fibers, because it is a recycled yarn. I have worn this not on a day like today where it's super humid and super hot, but I have worn this in the warm weather, and luckily my workplace has air conditioning, so I was pretty temperature regulated while I was wearing it. But I just wore it over a little white t-shirt with brown pants, and I thought I was looking pretty cute. So yeah, we'll see how well this, because also this color combination is not a normal color combination in my wardrobe. So we're gonna see, like, the blue definitely is. The blue green is definitely a color that is in my wardrobe, so that part won't be a problem. I think what I will struggle with is like, oh, do I wear something with it that picks out the green or the mustard yellow, or do I just wear whatever I want with this and hope that it doesn't clash too badly? But I do think it's really cute. I'm excited to have another vest in my wardrobe. Oh, I didn't talk about the buttons. The buttons, I did struggle with buttons, I'm gonna say. I almost went shopping, but then I didn't, because I was also really trying to use like the buttons that I have, and I've mentioned it before. Between my mother and myself, we have a vast button stash. So these are little brass shank style buttons, and these actually came off of a jacket that I do wear. I love this jacket, but I have changed size since I originally thrifted that jacket, so the jacket no longer buttons. So I was like, well, if I never button it, I'm going to take the buttons off. So I wear it a little bit more like a blazer, or just like, oh, I need sleeves, gonna put this on and not button it up. So I just decided to take the buttons off of it. The other problem I had is because they were shank buttons, those buttons kept getting caught on like seat belts, on bag straps, on like whatever. So they were actually kind of annoying anyway. So I just took them off and put them in my button stash, and I have now used them, which is great. That was a lot of finished objects. Let's move on to whips. And the theme continues. The forest Grogu green continues. So let's start by talking about this is not I'm no longer going in chronological order. These are my green forest green socks. I'm literally calling them the boreal socks because this marled yarn from Leo and Roxy is called Boreal. And this is a sock set that I purchased last summer when my husband and I were in the London, Ontario area, and we specifically made a trip out to St. Thomas to see Little Red Mitten. And I'm pretty sure I have a short video on the channel where I unbox a mystery pack that I bought while I was there, and this sock set was in it, so I'm finally using it. Yay! So yeah, the sock set comes with a mini skein of this green plus a mini skein with black because that is what this is marled with. So I plan to use the black definitely for the toe. Haven't decided if I'm using it for the heel just yet. We'll decide when I come to that. And here's what Boreal looks like. I really like it. But it's very foresty, mossy green. And I am knitting these socks in tandem, which means they're on their own needles, but I'm doing each part concurrently. So I've knit the cuff on this one and started the leg, and I have just finished knitting the cuff on the other one and just joined the marled yarn for the leg so that these will be sort of ish at the same stage as I go along. Really enjoying this sock yarn. I have not used the Leo and Roxy sock yarn before, and I'm really enjoying it. I might have to purchase some more of it, she says, as her other skeins of sock weight yarn just stare at her. But I really, really like it. If you're looking for good, solid, nice looking, solid colors, I believe this is from their Leo and Roxy Basics line. I'm pretty sure. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself. But yeah, it's great yarn. I have no idea how it will wear, but it feels great to work with. And yeah, so it's nice to have small sock project for when it's too hot, which is right now. Okay, let's talk about my other garment whip. And then I have another exciting whip, which does not fit the color theme, but I'm still very excited about it. Okay, so this top is taking forever. And well, you're going to be like, well, yeah, Bethany, it's because you're knitting it in lace weight. That's why it's taking forever. And I'm like, I know, but also it's taking forever. And I'm okay. I'll be fine. I just truly feel like I've been knitting it forever. So I am knitting another Lavaca. I've talked about this pattern before. Let me just hold this one up. Look at that. Look at that forest green. Okay, there we go. I'll also maybe pop a picture up. I will definitely have the pattern photo up, but I may take a better photo of what the whip actually looks like. But I am knitting this in Manos del Uruguay Marina. And that is their lace weight yarn, and it is a single. It's a single ply, and I really like it. I love the colors that Manos del Uruguay creates, and yeah, this one's called Arboretum. Fits the theme. And I'm really am liking how it's turning out. But it's taking so long on the body. It felt very, I was making good progress as I was shaping the raglan, which is what this is. This is a free pattern. And it's just a very basic raglan with not a ton of shaping. Um, and you can sort of play fast and loose with the gauge, and it will just affect the width that you get, and the length that you get depending on how much yarn you have. I forget whether it's written for lace weight, but I have a tendency to knit it in lace weight, which is pretty much what all of my Lavacas are. It's been lace weight on a largish needle. This one I am knitting on a 4.5 millimeter needle, and I do like how it's coming out. It's just taking forever on the body. Like, I was actually working on it this morning, and I was convinced I was like 3 rounds away from 8 inches, which is what I want the body to be from the underarm before I knit the hem. And then I measured it, and surprise, I was at 7.5 inches still. So that's rude. Uh, but it do be like that sometimes, especially with like lace weight. Like, yes, you're knitting a lot, but you're not exactly getting the length with every round, right? Not like knitting a worsted weight or even a DK weight thing, right? Like a few rounds and it's like, wow, that's another 1.5 inches. Yeah. So yeah, lace weight takes a while, and I need to remember that because it's been a minute since I've done that. I've been knitting projects at sort of larger gauge, and yeah, it's taking forever, but I'm excited to wear it. My plan for this is to knit the body to the length that I want, put the hem on it, and then split the remaining yarn in 2, and that is how long the sleeves will be. Because I'm not overly fussed if this ends up, because the yardage on this skein, because I'm only using one skein, the skein of lace weight is a little less yardage than what I have used to knit a Lavaca before. So I am a little bit playing with yarn chicken, but I'm only playing yarn chicken in the sleeves, and I don't mind that. So like if I only end up with like an actual short sleeve of like above the elbow garment, that's fine with me. If it ends up getting longer past the elbow, that's great too, because I like that. I like the feel of that as well. But yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out. TBD. My other whip is spinning. This is my spindle with my cob on it. Oh gosh, let's get that to focus a little bit. I am so like baby's first spin, okay? Absolutely. But I am so jazzed. So let's refer to my making goals list. This was basically at the top of my list. I bought a drop spindle. Gosh, I should stop waving it around. I bought a drop spindle and some fiber last summer at the Berry Fiber Fest, Fiber Spirit. So sorry, I keep wanting to call it Fiber Fest because it is a festival, but it's not Fiber Fest. It's Berry Fiber Spirit. And then I never did anything with the spindle and the fiber. This is not the spindle and the fiber that I bought last summer. This was purchased as part of a class that I took last month in May at a local yarn store, and I'm so glad that I did. There are some great YouTube instructional videos about how to get started with a drop spindle, but for me, it was so much better to learn from a person who could actually come over and like physically show me what I was or wasn't doing correctly. That was super great. Shout out to Jen. Jen, thank you so much. You've definitely created a new spinner. So yeah. The class fee covered the materials. So we each got a spindle, and we got to pick a braid of fiber that we got to use, and that is from a semi-local yarn dyer who also dyes fiber, the Frosted Stitch. I've probably mentioned them before. So yeah, and I have been doing my best to spin a little bit every day. This is definitely an activity for me that is time sensitive. I do have a bit of a chronic shoulder issue that can flare up literally at any time for any reason. So, um, generally speaking, these what I have found so far is that I can do I can spin for about maximum half an hour, which is fine. I think that's lots, honestly. I can definitely see how people fall into the rabbit hole of knitting, spinning for hours. But this, like, using a spindle is fairly physical, whereas, like, I think there's coordination when you use a wheel, but it's not the same as, like, hold the spindle, roll the spindle, things like that. Anyway, I am super enjoying this. This is not consistent by any means, although I do think I'm getting better. I have watched some instructional YouTube videos about getting a better consistency in your drafting, which is really what I've been struggling with and why I've been trying to practice a little bit every single day, and I've done a pretty good job of that. So this is where my cob is at right now, and this is what's left of my fiber. So this is the braid that I chose because she had a whole bunch of different colored dyed braids, and there was one there that was a gorgeous blue, and I'm like, well, I always choose blue, so should I choose something else? And I'm actually really glad that I chose this rainbowy braid, because I also feel like when I am drafting, I can really see what the fiber's doing, because in some cases, for instance, you can sort of see here, like if I was drafting this part in here where it goes from like white into purple and black, I can really see the twist that's happening in the fiber. And I think that's really helpful. I think if I had chosen a braid that had lower contrast, I don't think I would struggle. I just think I wouldn't be able to see it in the same way. And I think I would wonder whether I'm doing it correctly. Whereas, like, I can see, yes, I'm getting enough spin in that. And there's enough twist. And I can definitely see when I'm not getting enough twist, right? So, yeah. Oh, there you can see, you can see that the fan is on. So, yeah, I'm really excited to finish spinning this, and then I will ply it. I think I'm going to make it 2-ply. And then your girl will have her first skein of hand spun, which I'm torn. I'm like, knowing me, I'll probably eventually use it, but I have a feeling that for like 5 years, it's just going to stay in a skein and be like precious. Baby's first hand spun. It's like, oh, don't touch it. That's my first one. But it's like I'm already excited to buy more braids. This is a 100% Rambouillet fiber, and I'm really enjoying working with that. I would really like to find Rambouillet fiber again. I'm also interested in spinning BFL. I have heard that Merino is slippery. I do have some Merino fiber that I bought last summer with the other spindle that I have, but I'm not ready to tackle that yet. I think I'd like to go through another spin with a more, what's the word I want? Sticky fiber, like a fiber that really is not as slippery. I'd like to practice again with something like that. And then maybe move on to Merino to try doing that. Will I get a spinning wheel? Who knows? I mean, it's definitely appealing because of my chronic shoulder issue, and I'm just like, I do love the tactileness of using a drop spindle, but I can see, in terms of wanting to produce hand spun yarn for myself, I can see how having a wheel is really appealing. But I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. I do get that if I wanted to make it work, we would make it work. My husband is already like, just get a wheel. And I'm like, babe, don't give me license to do that. Like slow your roll. I'm not even sure if I want a wheel. But he knows I'm enjoying it. So anyway, okay. So that is baby's first spin. I'm very excited about it. Yeah, really enjoying that. I spin now. I missed I missed a whip. I missed a whip because it was behind me. The couch isn't big enough for all my stuff today. My last whip, I promise it's my last one, is the Victory Garden kerchief. Yeah, is the Victory Garden kerchief by Sarah Lawrence. And I am knitting this. Oh my gosh, help. Here we go. This is just a little garter stitch triangle kerchief shawl. And here we go. Definitely in the Bog Witch Grogu green summer color palette. And this is Stix Yarn and Fiber Zebra Merino Sock. So it's a marled yarn. So it's dyed um, in sort of these green purple shades, and then it's got a marled black thing through there. Couldn't think of the word. Anyway, I'm really liking how it's knitting up. I really like the color palette. It's very moody. I really like that at the moment, as we can tell. This is great TV knitting because you're just increasing on one row and then knitting flat on the other. So not a lot to think about, because as long as you are on the correct side, which is why I've marked it with my outrageously loud stitch marker. I know what side I'm on, and I know if I need to increase or not. Yeah, so that is my last whip, and yeah, so if I don't want to knit socks, this is what I've been knitting on, and that's it. We made it. I feel like that was so much. I don't even want to forecast what's coming next because I've got so many whips, like plus the spinning. So you know what? I think we're just gonna leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I know it's been a minute, even though I've released other videos, but I know and project update has been a minute. I'll try not to let it go that long, because honestly, I had to like reacquaint myself with all the stuff that I'd finished, all the stuff that I'm working on. So maybe it should be a shorter time span just for my brain. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like what you see here, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. If you want to share it with a friend who thinks they might enjoy the vibe that's here, please do so. All that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope that wherever you are feeling safe and you are feeling cozy but cool. Stay cool, stay hydrated, okay, friends? But I also, I hope you're feeling the cozy vibes, not actually being cozy, because probably that's like too hot. Unless you're in the southern hemisphere and it's winter right now, then I hope you're cozy. But if you're in the northern hemisphere and it's summer, stay cool. And until my next video, happy knitting.